Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Actually decided that the Black Panther Party was the best possible hope at that time for the black community. I believe I became a target of COINTELPRO.
After nearly 44 years in prison, former Black Panther Party leader Marshall Eddie Conway is free. He joins us today in Baltimore, less than 24 hours after leaving prison. Then the remarkable story of a Colorado father who's now trying to prevent his son's murderer from being executed.
I see an opportunity here, an opportunity to make something positive out of my son's death. And you're a part of it. We're all a part of that. When your trial starts in January, I told him I'll be at the courthouse, but I'll be outside picketing. Because I don't believe it's justice. The death penalty would not bring me any satisfaction.
Bob Audeby wants to tell a jury why he opposes the death penalty for the man who killed his son, who worked as a prison guard. But a judge says he cannot raise the issue in his victim's statement to the court. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. and Russia are holding face-to-face talks today for the first time since the crisis in Ukraine escalated last month. Secretary of State John Kerry is to meet with Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on the sidelines of a summit in Paris. On Tuesday, Kerry visited the Ukrainian capital of Kiev to show support for the government that replaced ousted Russian-backed President Viktor Yanukovych. Kerry pledged around $1 billion in U.S. aid and warned Russia of sanctions if it doesn't withdraw from Crimea.
If Russia does not choose to de-escalate, if it is not willing to work directly with the government of Ukraine, as we hope they will be, then our partners will have absolutely no choice but to join us to continue to expand upon steps we have taken in recent days in order to isolate Russia politically, diplomatically, and economically.
In addition to the $1 billion from the U.S., the European Union is set to offer a $15 billion aid package today to Ukraine. On Tuesday, unarmed Ukrainian forces held a standoff with Russian counterparts after marching on a Russian position in Crimea, demanding their withdrawal. The Ukrainians ultimately pulled back after several hours. In his first news conference since deploying troops around Crimea last week, Putin claimed he would use force only as a last resort.
What can be the reason to use the armed forces? This is, of course, the last resort, simply the last resort. If we see that lawlessness starting in eastern regions too, if people ask us for help, and we have already an official address from the current legitimate president, we reserve the right to use all options at our disposal to protect those citizens.
Both Putin and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have denied Russian soldiers are occupying Crimea, saying the masked troops are local forces. On Tuesday, President Obama criticized Putin's claims.
I know President Putin seems to have a different set of lawyers making a different set of interpretations, but I don't think that's fooling anybody. I think everybody recognizes that although Russia has legitimate interests in what happens in a neighboring state, that does not give it the right to use force as a means of exerting influence inside of that state.
The White House has unveiled its proposed budget for the next fiscal year. The $3.9 trillion measure includes a reduction of tax breaks for wealthy Americans and corporations, which Republicans have vowed to oppose. It also targets low-income workers under the age of 25 for additional benefits, including an expansion of earned income tax credits. Speaking at a Washington, D.C. elementary school, President Obama said his budget reflects a commitment to tackling inequality.
At a time when our deficits are falling at the fastest rate in 60 years, we've got to decide if we're going to keep squeezing the middle class or if we're going to continue to reduce the deficits responsibly while taking steps to grow and strengthen the middle class. The American people have made clear time and again which approach they prefer. That's the approach that my budget offers. That's why I'm going to fight for it this year and in the years to come. as president.
The proposed military budget for 2015 is $575 billion. The Pentagon seeking an additional $79.4 billion in war funding, even though most U.S. troops are supposed to withdraw from Afghanistan by the end of the year. The oil giant Chevron has won a major victory in a lawsuit it brought against victims of its pollution in Ecuador. A group of indigenous plaintiffs won a landmark $9 billion judgment in 2011 for widespread contamination resulting from toxic dumping by Texaco, which Chevron later bought. But Chevron sued the victims and their U.S. attorney, accusing them of bribing the judge in the case and presenting fraudulent evidence. On Tuesday, U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan agreed, ruling the plaintiffs used, quote, corrupt means. He also barred collection of their $9 billion judgment in the United States. In a statement, Chevron hailed what it called a resounding victory that'll make the Ecuadorian judgment illegitimate and unenforceable. The plaintiffs say they plan to appeal and still pursue the $9 billion judgment in other countries. In a statement, the group Amazon Watch called the verdict, quote, an example of Chevron buying and bullying its way to a verdict with 60 law firms and thousands of legal professionals hell-bent on exhausting the Ecuadorians and their allies. Such a verdict will ultimately prove useless in Chevron's efforts to evade justice, they said. An appeals court has rejected the oil giant BP's attempt to limit payouts stemming from its 2010 oil spill in the Gulf. BP had accused local businesses of claiming fictitious losses and seeking compensation for damages from the worst offshore oil spill in U.S. history. The ruling lifts an injunction that had frozen the payments pending a court decision on BP's suit. The Washington, D.C. City Council has given final approval of a measure to decriminalize marijuana. The move would scrap criminal penalties for pot possession in favor of a violation equivalent to a parking ticket. City Council member and bill sponsor Tommy Wells said the new law will address racial disparities in drug arrests.